Hi everyone, and welcome to the Tranmere Rovers International Department's podcast, focusing on a number of key personnel at the club. Today we're fortunate to be joined by Aaron Argomandkhah. He is our first team nutritionist, as well as big background in sports science. He's been with the club for the last 4 years now. So welcome, Aaron. Great to have you on the podcast.
Yes.
Great stuff. So I think what I'd like to do today is just touch a little bit about your background, how you came into the role that you're in at the moment, key moments that you've had during your time at the club, and anything that sticks out. And then, especially for our American viewers, if you've got any advice in terms of nutrition to what younger players can look to put into their diet and how they can develop if they're looking to become athletes of the future. So I'd hand it over to a good friend of mine, Matt. If you got any questions for Aaron to get us kicked off.
Yeah, firstly, how did it all come about? We've got a very strong link with Liverpool John Moores University, which is obviously where you graduated from, and you did an internship at Tranmere Rovers from there. So how did that all come about, and how was the first sort of initial experience? Because it must have been quite daunting going from the lecture rooms and that sort of environment into a first team at a professional football club.
Yeah, daunting is a good way to describe it. As you say, club's got great links with John Moores University, and it was a relationship that was already established. Prior to me becoming a student there, and I think has gone from strength to strength since. So as you say, I did my masters at Liverpool John Moores University, which has got an excellent global reputation, one of the best institutes for sports science research in the world, really, and a really strong pedigree for applied practice from a lot of guys that come out of there, and even the professors that teach there. So my master's was in sports and exercise nutrition, and I started that course on the back of having done a sports coaching undergraduate degree, which was my first sort of initial sort of foray into wanting to work in sports. I actually coached out in America and Canada for a couple of years out on my during my undergrad, and it was kind of really those experiences that led me down the sports science pathway. It's, as you can imagine, there's a lot of people want to be involved in professional sport, and my strength was always more on the scientific side than really sort of in the trenches on the applied side as a coach, as much as I enjoyed it, which is what led me to pursue the masters and starting the internship at Tranmere.
Funny you should mention that though, Aaron, because it is a bit of a balancing act, isn't it, in your role? And I think it's helped you having a background of coaching and being able to relay information to people, because you've obviously got to have the scientific knowledge to back yourself up, but without that personable approach that you seem to have with players, we can get very far. So how do you find that?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point, and it wasn't sort of, I was a decent coach, but I knew that there were so many people that were much more knowledgeable and passionate is probably the wrong word, because I was passionate about being a coach as well. But a lot of ex-pros go into coaching, so it really floods the market there. So you've got to really back yourself 100%. And I was already swayed a little bit by the prospect of the sports side. That side always attracted me. It was a thing I was always interested in as a spectator of sport, looking what people were doing sports science side. As you say, the coaching background, probably has helped a great deal, I think, with my applied sports science side of it, definitely. It gives you, I think, a bit of a different appreciation of knowing how people work, rather than just attacking players with science, because that kind of falls on deaf ears a little bit. You need to, I think, the humanistic side of it, which coaching develops in a person, being able to, that kind of unlocks the door. So actually they're a lot more open to listening to what you've got to say on the scientific side, definitely.
And how was it sort of coming into then, obviously from uni, into a first team environment where you've got professional football players that are 30 in their 30s, experienced professionals that have been in and around the game, in not just in the UK but worldwide. So coming into that environment as a as a 20, 22, 23-year-old and sort of telling these lads what they need to be doing from a nutritional standpoint? Did you get a lot of, slated for that by quite a lot of the pros saying, I'm not going to listen to what this lad's got to say? Were the coaches quite hesitant with it, or was it pretty fluid, the transition?
Yeah, you know what? It was really exciting. And you described it as daunting a few moments ago, and it was that as well. But I was 100% ready to relish the challenge of going into that environment. I think if I'd gone in, and again, not to compare coaching and sports science, I think I backed myself much more with the scientific side. So, well, yeah, I knew I would have some resistance. I wasn't blind to that, and that I'd have to win people over first before they listened to me. But I think I was probably confident in my mind that I could help them, that I wasn't really going to be deterred by a little bit of initial resistance. If you got it, I was able to push that past that just with persistence, I think, and I think that in itself, helps to build just some buy-in a little bit. I think.
Was there a moment that you'd say that you felt in that I've won the trust of the lads now, and I feel accepted? Were you working towards that?
Yeah, in a weird way, and this is football environment, especially in England, through and through. It's when you start getting when the stick you get off the lads becomes almost too far. That's the moment of like you being accepted a little bit, because you forget, for professional players, that they'll have seen tons of students and interns and stuff, throughout their careers, and now they get a new set from coaching to physios to medical and stuff every year, and they have the same kind of banter with everyone. They like to poke and push and see how far you can take it, and I think there's a moment where that flicks over to, yeah, you're all right. We'll listen to you now. We've had our fun. I think you get to a certain point with that it's not just them fobbing you off, that they're genuinely open to listening now. And I'm lucky. I've worked with some of them now for some of the same group for about 4 years, and I'm really close to a lot of the guys, which is obviously great.
And what about the coaches? Because back when you started with Mickey Mellon as the manager, and Jacko, who's now the current manager, as the assistant back then, and that group, how are the coaches? Because they must have been quite used to the feeling of interns coming in from John Moore. So do they sort of let you crack on, or do they have a lot of input? Because what you do, because it's at Tranmere Rovers, you're all in the same room, the nutritionist, the physio, everyone's in the same environment. So they've got to bounce off each other to make sure that the schedule all fits in and works. And obviously, as the manager, you want to have as much ownership as you can. So how did they react?
You know what, they were remarkable. I'd kind of been geared up to thinking that I've got to really win these people over. We need to get the buy-in of the manager and the assistant manager and blah, blah, blah. And to some extent, that's kind of true. But listen, at the end of the day, their job is to win football matches. And if there's someone coming in here confident that they can help you do that, they will be open to it. That's just human nature. And Mickey and Jacko were no different, really. They were, massively supportive. Obviously, ask you questions. They want to feel out if you're genuine. But I think there's an understanding of, if you're coming from the likes of John Moore's, you've got that academic acumen already to be able to, that you will be able to help, especially if they're the kind of guys that do buy into sports science anyway. It's then whether you can, as a person, connect with the guys to get your input across, and that's the key crux to a lot of it, really. It's one thing having there's loads of people with the academic understanding and knowing you should do X, Y, and Z to have this result. It's getting that buy-in and trust from the players to actually implement it, and not just at the training ground. There is a lot of contact time with the players at the training ground, and they spend a lot of time in and amongst the group. Also, equally, they spend a lot of time at home away from you, where you've got no control. No matter what you've said and what guidance you've given and plans you've given them to take home, if they've not made that commitment in their own minds to follow something, you're not having any impact.
Is some of the work you do subliminal then, would you say, in that you're trying to like behavioral psychology, if you like. You're trying to guide them without telling them this is what you got to do. You just tweak little tweaks here and there, or it might be a little quiet word in the corridor with somebody that might have an impact further down the line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's absolutely a massive part of it. My style's not really to sit someone in an office and say, you know, we think you need to do X, Y, or Z. You know, you need to lose body fat, or you need to fuel more, or you need to do whatever it is that we've decided as a group, because it is a group decision. It's not just me as a nutritionist identifying an area of improvement in this player and going off on my own and sorting it out with them. It's a multidiscipline decision. So the physios are involved. What impact is my intervention going to have? Maybe a knock-on consequence of, does it increase or decrease risk of injury? They're interested in that as a physio. The fitness coach is interested. You know, I mean, nutrition and conditioning are the most too closely linked, if anything. So making sure that I'm in tandem with what he's putting together from a fitness point of view in terms of prehab, warm-ups, conditioning, whether what we're trying to do fits in with that overall picture. So the two are really overlaid. And also with the coaches, what do they want out of that player? You know, I might from the outside looking in see a winger and we need to increase repeat sprint ability. He might have a different idea, and that all goes in hand with the intervention. So we kind of sit down as a department and agree, this is where we want this player to get to, this is where he can improve. And then I set out sort of not sneakily, but kind of little bit by bit. Sometimes it takes a sit down, and there's a time and a place for that, of course. But I almost need them to come to the conclusion with me that that's where they need to get to, as opposed to them being told, because already you set up that little bit of resistance. So I much prefer that they're involved in the decision and they take ownership of the decision, and it comes about that way a little bit.
It's interesting. It's interesting you say that. When you first came to the club were in the 5th division in England, the conference. Did you find then there were players that were recruited from lower leagues as well? There were players that had come from the leagues, and it was kind of an amalgamation of a different, all players had different experiences. Did you find that, those different backgrounds, the pros were more geared up to, or they already had the nutritional knowledge, or did you find that some people were set in their ways and you needed to intervene in a certain way? Or, when you're talking about players coming round to you and coming round to your way of thinking and developing them, I guess it comes down to them wanting to be the best player they can be and having the best career they can. And once you've sort of set the tone for that, then you get the buy-in from them.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of hit the nail on the head there. It's players wanting to be the best that they can be. And by no means the tactic that I employ now in terms of a little bit softly approach wasn't the approach that I started with as a student. And in a little bit ways you can't, because you've got no track record of improving. I had nothing to point to going in initially. And yeah, as you say, a group that's mixed in terms of their experience with sports science and doing things in that manner. It was probably a more difficult situation than what I find myself now, actually at a higher level of football, in that I had to show immediate impact to try and help get that buy-in, because at the end of the day, if I can't just get buy-in by being a nice guy and getting on with the guys, they need to see that I'm actually helping improve. So there was certain things that I did put in place immediately that was very direct with them, just to show that I'm here to improve you and to explain to them how we can improve. So for example, one thing, and again, with the support of the manager, where we were set up previously when we were in the non-league, we didn't have a training ground, but we weren't based there. We were based out at the stadium. And breakfast was just kind of a table in the staff kitchen that the office staff and everyone kind of all used. A tiny little kitchen, had a microwave, a kettle, and then there was a table with like some bread, some cereal and milk. And that's what the guys would kind of come in the morning, stand there eating a piece of toast or with a bowl of cereal. didn't really sit down. So I had this idea there was a meeting room next door that didn't really get used in the mornings when they were there. So I said, why don't we set that up into like a bit of a breakfast room? So set tables up in there. The manager was all for it. He really wanted everyone together as a group. So straight away I was ticking 2 boxes. The lads obviously aren't going to turn their nose up to a better breakfast, because who would? I could then have much more impact over what they were fueling themselves with in the morning. So 2. And for number 3, the manager was massively on board. So build a little buy-in with him to kind of get him on side, so that it allows me probably to have a bit more of an impact. And it ticked a few boxes, and I think that was one of the key moments for me, really. And that started the ball rolling for me slowly to change the culture in terms of how nutrition and looking after yourself in that way was viewed. And the other thing it allowed me to do, obviously, because I was having control then of what they were having at breakfast, it being a better breakfast, and as a consequence, the whole group slowly realised that they felt better on those days that I'd set that up. So straight away, mass buy-in, because everyone's like, wow, this actually has made me feel a bit better. So that was that little bit of buy-in that I needed with everyone to slowly then, when I was suggesting other things, that they would take it a little bit more seriously.
Brilliant. And straight away there, not only are you hitting obviously the physical corner, but when we're talking about coaching, psychologically, socially, the players are engaging with you and with each other. So straight away there, you've tapped into 3 corners, and I bet you the manager was delighted with that. So yeah, that's a great piece of work and a great bit of advice for anybody looking to set the tone really for how the players would then respect you, because I bet going into that afterwards, players respected you a hell of a lot more after that you'd actually put your stamp on things then.
Yeah, and it's a quick win. It wasn't. I mean, it wasn't a difficult thing to set up. It just took a little bit of insight and willing, really. And as you say, it's the players realizing that you're genuinely there to make an impact. So I was physically cooking the scrambled eggs and the toast and doing a bit of spinach and tomatoes and stuff like that. So they saw that I wasn't just there to say do this or X. I was getting my hands dirty. And there's one of my lecturers has a phrase. They want to wear want to wear the tracksuit, but they don't want to run the laps. So it's not just a case of I was giving my top and the access there and thinking that I've made it and I can just boom, this is what we're going to do. It's physically being on the ground and doing some delivery, and I still live by that now. Even after 4 years, it's to still do the small details. I think gets noticed by people. True for sports science, nutrition, coaching, anything. You look at the top football managers in the world, and you often see a lot of them. They put the cones out, and those little details that it goes a massive way. And I think just to keep yourself grounded in that level as well is massively important.
And I think that all resonates, not just in a professional first team environment, but firstly, there you're talking about nutrition. You've got to have the right environment and the people, and as well as the nutrition itself. So it's not just the food that you're eating; it's everything around it. But if you're a grassroots player, or you're just in a club in America or abroad, might be going on a nutrition plan with a mate, or doing it with another player and doing it as like a group of you, rather than you just doing it individually. And then probably having the mood swings that will come with not being able to have your favourite treats and stuff like that. But if you're doing it all together, then there's that sense of unity. And then just like Dan said, you're hitting all the corners, the social side of things and the psychological side of things, as well as the actual, not technical in this case, but it's what you're eating. So I'm sure it resonates on that front too.
Yeah, just building a little support network. Everything's much easier to achieve, as a group. And if you can have a laugh and a joke with your teammates and build that bond stronger, as a consequence, then, all the better, really.
But how would you then? So one thing we see quite a lot around the training ground and the players comment on is like their treats that they like. So Dan's touched on that. You might have some of the lower league players who come through and they're a little less strict with what they eat, so they have their treats that they like to have. how do you wipe it out of them completely? Do you slowly try to get it out of them? Do you use it as rewards? What's the technique you use to try and maintain them at a good level, sort of psychologically, that they want to buy into what you're doing, but they also want the rewards that come with it, sort of thing?
Yeah, it's a really interesting notion, that, really. And it's funny because I've had these exact conversations with players only this week, last week. It's something that's really quite common. And the approach I would rather take, because you're always trying to build buy-in. It's not just that I'm working to build buy-in, I've achieved it, and now I've got it. It's, it can as quickly go as it comes, really. So it's always trying. My main goal is to make sure that the lads understand that I want what is best for them as a person and as an athlete. So the last thing I want to be is the food police, to say, no, you cannot have that ever, and you mustn't do this. I think it actually goes further, and this is a technique that I use to not encourage it, but don't always be seen as the guy that's slapping that. Oh no, you can't have that cheat meal, you can't have that Indian. We're all humans at the end of the day, and these kinds of foods are something that people enjoy, and quite often enjoy with their families. So I don't like the idea of a guy sat there every night eating his own food separate to his family. So it's one, trying to encourage the behavior of, maybe you can help the whole family on most nights, and we'll eat sensibly and what's best for everyone, a healthy meal. But by all means, if you guys are going out for a Chinese, you're not going to sit and eat your salmon pasta before you go out and watch everyone eat Chinese. It's just not going to happen. No one lives their life like that. It's encouraging them that that's okay. Because the other thing that happens is people can get massive food guilt, and this notion of, oh, well, I've already done that now. Like, say if they go out for the Chinese, they go, well, I've had the Chinese now, I might as well have a McDonald's breakfast tomorrow. It starts that snowball effect. So it's making them feel psychologically safe that they can make decisions like that, but it doesn't have to wipe out the whole week. I'd rather go out, have a Chinese, enjoy it with family. Can you make some sensible decisions while you're there? Do you need to get the spring rolls and the prawn toast and the sweet and sour chicken with the fried rice? Can you get boiled rice instead? Can you make some smart decisions while you're there? So already they're feeling, though, you know what, this guy, he wants me to enjoy this meal with my family. That's already gone a long way in his mind. So for one, he feels comfortable going out for his meal with his family, that he can enjoy it, still have something nice. Right, he might need to make some small accommodations. But he also knows that then, as a consequence, the rest of the week, his motivation level for eating everything that he should is much higher. And I've not had to tell him to do that. Just by simply being a little bit accepting that you will have some meals that might not be completely ideal. You don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I think a lot of people do that sometimes. That it's that snowball effect of, oh, I've had a chocolate bar now. It's 12 o'clock already, and I've already had a chocolate bar. Or screw it, I might as well have that bag of crisps, and yeah, I'll get a pizza tonight. And before you know, it's out of control. And then they're not going to tell me about that anyway. So I'd be none the wiser. They'll be really secretive about it. I would rather try and create a culture of being open. So I talk to the lads just as much about Domino's and Chinese and Indian and all the stuff that they shouldn't really be eating on a regular basis, just as much as I talk to them about vegetables and fresh fish and stuff like that. Because it's creating the environment that we can feel safe and no one's going to get dug out or anything like that.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, nothing's off limits. We just need to be sensible about it, and I'd rather have that trust and that they can be honest with me. So quite often they come in, as I had a Nando's last night, and I got the fries and the mash and blah blah blah. I had 2 Cokes. I'd rather know that than them hide it from me because they think that they're going to get dug out to the manager or something like that. But I can do that once I've got the information. I can't do anything without the information.
Yeah, No, it's brilliant, and I definitely remember going on. I think it was the first team bus after Morecambe away, and just the pizzas just lined up after a game. Obviously, with the amount of calories burned during a 90-minute fixture and what you need to sort of replenish and that. But no, it's
And
definitely true.
that's not a regular occurrence. So, and again, it's funny that you mentioned that. I throw on a pizza. They used to have pizza after every game, and it's about creating that culture that maybe we'll have pizza 2 or 3 times in a season, and it's so much more appreciated as a result of being an occasional treat. Obviously, if I'd love to be able to know the results ahead of time so I can reward a good result with a pizza. But you can't plan it like that, unfortunately. So we're lucky the few times that we do it is after a good result. But most of the time, they have a really nice meal prepared for by the chef. It'll be a carbohydrate, vegetables, and a protein source. And we pre-prepare that at the training ground, and we take it with us and we heat it back. John, the bus driver, on the way back, heats that up.
I was going to ask about Aaron, because your relationship with the players is obviously key, but how have you seen the role sort of develop over the last 4 years in that your relationship with the other staff members? So you talked about your relationship with the manager, with the sports science department, with Hodgie, head of S&C. So how important is that sort of logistical management as well, in terms of speaking with the chef, speaking with the hotel on away games, planning in the meals for away games and stuff like that you've already talked about? So guess what I'm trying to ask? How much of it is how you expected it to be when you were studying and you one-to-one with the players, and how much is it like logistics or thinking on your feet and things that you've had to pick up in the role?
Yeah, I think in some ways it's not too different than how I thought in terms of the grander things that I've achieved, in the sense of when you put it down on paper, we've created a catering department that delivers, high quality food that everyone enjoys. I brought in some key performance supplements and different things we do around actually enhancing performance. It's not just all about health and body fat and stuff like that, things that genuinely enhance performance, and some interventions I've brought in there. So those things that were broadly in my mind, how I wanted the department to look, are kind of in there. Yeah. How it's physically come about is I didn't have the capability to figure out how that would be, but the logistics and all that's involved is absolutely huge. I'm obviously not there every single day as a part-time sports nutritionist, because down at this level there's just not the budget there for a full-time sports nutritionist. So I'm relying on a lot of people to put the vision into place and implement it every day. So we set up the broad vision, but it's the chef Leroy is phenomenal, and he knows the players almost better than I do in terms of what they like to eat, because they eat in his room every day. I'm only there once or twice a week. It's changed slightly post-COVID. I'm doing a few other things that are a lot more involved, but pre-COVID, that he's there with them every single meal. So he knows their individual tastes, what they're up to. He's got a really, close bond with the guys that I just can't get that access because I'm not with them at every single meal. So rely on that massively. When we're doing the menu, he's like, yeah, he's changed his mind. He doesn't like that now. And they really enjoyed that day. And without that insight, it'd be nothing. It'd just be me coming up with meals that I think they should be eating. Him trying to put it, I'm not autocratic in that sense. It's between us. We come up with the menu. I mean, I've worked with him now for a couple of years, so I've kind of left him to his own devices a little bit at the start of this season, because I want to give him the opportunity to express himself. And his food's incredible. You guys have obviously eaten Leroy's food. It's incredible. So he doesn't need me to really tell him what to cook now. He knows what I want to fuel the guys with. We have a catch up now and then around key fixtures and stuff for extra fueling. On away games, John, the bus driver, gives me a lot of stick, because now he's got to heat up all these meals. But he does it with a smile on his face, not to me. He's giving me down the banks, but he's phenomenal.
Didn't he leave you down at Wembley one year?
He did leave me at Wembley, yeah. So we're about even now for all the extra work I've put onto his toes. Yeah, he did. He left me at Wembley after we won the playoff final. So I went back solo, well, with the kit men. That's a whole different story. But he boxes the food off after the game. Hodgie, day to day, the little habits and supplements and hydration and fueling and all the other things we've put in place. Really, it's him implementing it day to day, and I'm just there weekly to kind of top it up and keep the flow going, and the whole environment. Tim, you guys know Tim, and he liaises with the hotels. We've done a menu and that gets sent off, but he makes sure that everything's organised. So it's a broader team implementation of a strategy we came up together with as well. But with my input really.
And talking about Wembley, then, I mean, during the 4 years that the three of us have been at the club, I mean, it's been 3 Wembley visits and a global pandemic, so it's not been boring. With the hype that surrounds a playoff final, so we've had three playoff finals in the last 4 years, with 2 of them ending in victory, 1 going to extra time and 1 in extreme circumstances, and having 10 men for pretty much the whole game. Do players, with the hype surrounding such a big game, do players act differently? Do they request different things going to the match? Do you try and get different things going, or do you stick to the same routine every time and try to keep that going? But there must be players that get that bit of a buzz and sort of changes the way that they might accept what you're trying to give them. Or how is it with those big games? What's it like for you as a nutritionist? What do you see from the players?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, actually, because there's suddenly a lot riding on that game. So you find yourself, if you ask for something as a department from the club, if we need to buy X or Y, most of the time you'll be able to get it through. But it's almost that you don't want to change too much going into a game like that, because bear in mind, if you've got to a playoff final, you must have been doing something right in season. So it wouldn't really make much sense to change anything dramatically in how we prepare for the game. You don't need to do anything differently to make the lads realise that it's a big game. They're at Wembley Stadium, we stayed in the Hilton right opposite the stadium. They can look out the window and they can see the National Stadium where they're going to play tomorrow. They need to win the game to move up a division. So we didn't really change too much as a sports medical department in terms of what we did. But the buy-in from players changed quite significantly. Normally I'd have to coax them into having a gel. So I go around at pre-match and half-time with a gel and a caffeine chewing gum. And I know it's what they should be taking, but it's down to individual preference. Maybe the stomach's not feeling right or whatever. And sometimes I've got to coax them. I've got pretty good knack now for sensing when someone's genuinely not interested in taking on board your intervention, or they might have, especially at half time, is a really difficult situation, right? So they might have given away a penalty, be really frustrated with their own performance. There's loads of other factors going in than what's just in my world of hydration, fueling, caffeine, performance supplements, and whatever I need to do. That's my world, and that's what I'm focused on. And their picture is much broader. It's what I'm doing is only a small element of their day. And sometimes they've got too much going on. So it's being able to figure out if, no, they're just palling you off because they want to concentrate, or they genuinely don't want something. But those Wembley visits, everyone is, whatever you say to them, take this, it'll make you play better. They are taking it 100%.
As a nutritionist, you've got to think on your feet as well, haven't you? All the time, well, extra time, and you don't envisage as a nutritionist going down to 10 men after 45 seconds, and the impact that's then going to have on the players and for the rest of the game, and what you're then going to have to adapt during the game, and that you've got to think on your feet. So that must, some challenges you've had at Wembley Stadium there for sure.
Yeah, well, the penalties, not the penalties. Did we have penalties one year? Did we have penalties? No, we didn't. Extra time it was, sorry. I'm getting all games confused in my head now. Yeah, the extra time actually at Newport, we went down to 10 men that game, luckily. But it was an incredibly hot day. This was like 30 odd degrees. So all game we were flying through the waters, and we had 2 water breaks and all that business. So I brought down Lucasades as well. So just as an extra sort of vehicle for getting on carbohydrates and fluids. And actually, the goalkeeper, Scott Davis, is so particular about what drink that he wants. He likes a BCA hydration drink and the water. And he takes, one of each out with him to the goal, and that's what he wants. So I got these Lucasades ready, and I'd one for take on at half time of extra time. Everyone sprinted over, and he spotted that some of the lads have got a Lucasade. So he turns to me and he's like, Lucasade, I want a Lucasade. I'm like, I've not got one for you. I've given them all out. And he's a super intense guy. I mean, you guys know that he's one of the most sort of single-minded, particular people that you could ever wish to meet. So I was almost frozen in panic of, oh my God, he's going to lose his head. But I remembered that I'd put one down next to someone that is less bothered. They would happily take a gel. And I'd quickly spotted while he was making his beeline over towards me that they hadn't picked their drink. They wouldn't drink it if someone's even gone near it yet. So I quickly swiped that back off him, swapped it for a gel, and sorted him out. But definitely, yeah, high pressure situations.
Yeah.
Probably nothing to him in the grand scheme. He probably doesn't even remember that happening. But to me, as my goal is to fuel the guys. That was one of the big moments.
Is it sometimes then when something goes wrong, as a practitioner, people can look at you and say, is it because I didn't have this, or is it because I didn't have that? Whereas, if everything goes brilliant and you've done a fantastic job, sometimes it's down to other things. Or as a player, it's because I played really well today. Do you find that sometimes, or are you happy to have that and happy just to let it flow like that?
Yeah, I would much rather that every day of the week, for them to not even consider that I've had any impact. My impact isn't 100%. There's a lot of arguments of it's 80% nutrition and 20% exercise and all these things. Listen, every industry and field is going to shout loudest about how much impact they have. I'm by no means completely biased that I have such a huge impact. I have a small impact, and that can grow as people become more open to it. But yeah, it's down to the players at the end of the day in terms of what they put in physically and with the heart and with the head. And if I can help with 5% of that, say, they can help them, give them that little tiny edge. That's
do you find that
for me.
Do you find that by the time that you get to working with players as professionals, that they've already got their own sort of way of doing things? They've already got like habits that they might talk about and stuff. So do you find that your biggest influence almost could be with the younger players, sort of that, 14, 15, 16, where you're getting them into good habits? Is there anything for that age group that certainly for when Matt and myself, when we go over and work over in the States, or when we're in China or Indonesia, is there something that you can wish for that age group to get on board with, or some advice for parents of those players?
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, yeah, the young guys have not made it yet, so they're a lot more open to doing anything that will give them a little bit of an advantage or will help speed up their development or whatever it may be. Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing, especially for that age, 15, 16, developing players, is understanding the importance of what they eat in their development. Yeah, they need to get a lot of calories on board, but those calories can turn pretty quickly in terms of if you just make it open book, open season of go out and eat as many calories as you can. Is that the best thing that they're putting into themselves, that are going to set up good habits for when they hopefully make it as a professional? Because what you don't want to get is by the time you're 23, 24, at a bit of a younger age, you can get away quite easily with eating a poor diet, and still developing. But that quickly catches up on you as an adult, and you've not developed the necessary behaviours to have a lasting, impactful career at the top condition that you can be. So definitely getting into the habits and the behaviours of eating the things that you should be eating at a young age is massively important. Habit is the perfect word. And at that age, taste buds and things are developing really quickly as well. So one week you might eat something, try it for the first time, think that's disgusting. Sometimes a little bit of perseverance, and they need encouragement as well. You know, someone tries something, it's easy to say, oh, I don't like that, I'm not going to try it again. If you just persist with things, you've got more of a chance of it developing into a behaviour and a habit. And yeah, that's probably a key bit of advice I'd say. Fruits and vegetables are massively important for development anyway, but also as an adult, you can't get away with just eating McDonald's and Pizza Hut and stuff all the time. You need to be able to eat a balanced diet.
Yeah, no, it's great, and it's great advice. We've had a lot of international groups come over which have some interesting diets. Let's put it that way, especially with what's eaten in China compared to Indonesia and America. I mean, for you, how's that been for you to see the different cultures and how they react to nutrition when they're over here in the UK training with us, be it a coach or a player? What's your sort of thoughts been on those guys and girls?
Yeah, they eat a lot, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's great to have a good appetite. Yeah, it's interesting to see the different cultures, really, and what staples are in different countries. And listen, there's no one right way to eat. There's no one wrong way to eat. I think it's just finding whatever you can align with what you like most easily. That's going to be the most sustainable way that you can alter your diet or adapt your diet, should I say. So there's by no means does someone from Asia need to throw out an Asian diet for a adapted Western diet as an athlete. That doesn't need to happen whatsoever, because there's thousands of incredible athletes obviously from Asia and likewise from the United States. So anything can be adapted to working for you, and I think it's finding what that is. But in my experience, yeah, a diet that's based around vegetables and everything else is supplemented in, not supplemented in terms of supplements, but to eat fruit and veg predominantly, is probably one of the best ways that people stay healthy, I find.
Brilliant. Well, thanks very much for your time today, Aaron. It's been very insightful, been through quite a lot there, and Matt and I really appreciate it, and we really appreciate you looking after the guys that we bring over from abroad as well. So thank you very much for this evening, and we'll see you soon.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, Aaron.
Nice one.